Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Menopause Science. My name is Jyoti Sharma. I'm a health sciences researcher, CEO, and founder of Tara Cares. Tara Cares is an AI health tech startup committed to addressing unmet global health needs in menopause awareness, diagnosis, and management with artificial intelligence. Menopause Science is an initiative launched by Tara Cares to offer evidence-based knowledge on various aspects of menopause transition. By 2025, over 1 billion women will be in menopause transition or perimenopause. That is 12% of the world's population. On Menopause Science, we aim to demystify misinformation on various aspects of menopause with research and science. We celebrate courageous women who are stepping forward to have a conversation with us on their personal experience with menopause as they aspire to help millions of women. Today, we are joined by one such courageous and bold woman, Amantha King. Amantha, welcome to Menopause Science.
Thank you very much, Jyoti. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Right, so let's start. Let's understand who Amantha is a little bit more before we go further on into the conversation. Amantha is founder of Amantha King Coaching, with 25 years of strengths-based coaching in pharmaceutical industry, working with companies such as IQVIA, Bayer, UCB Pharma, NHS, Astra Zeneca, amongst others. Amantha is half Sri Lankan who experienced perimenopause quite quickly after her first pregnancy at 36. What followed was a decade of being passed from pillar to post by the healthcare system until she took matters in her own hands. Amantha also holds a degree in Biomedical Sciences from Nottingham Trent University and is a registered member of the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industry. Needless to say, I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Amantha. Before we head forward, the disclaimer: participation in this session is voluntary with no commercial benefits to the company or the participant. The sole purpose of the session is to help women of all ages to prepare and manage their unique individual menopause transition. Data consent to record the session and air on YouTube and other marketing channels has been granted by the participant. So let's progress. Now, here are some of the questions that we would like to have a chat with Amantha today. We will let the conversation flow. And some of the things, she has a very rich experience with everything that I know of her and her experience and the work she's doing with women in various companies. So Amantha, let me begin with the first question. What did it feel like when your GP or your gynecologist informed you that you were in perimenopause? And for you, it was quite early. I mean, 36 is not an age where women actually expect to be in menopause. I think, that's become the age when women start thinking about their first child. And as you've shared, you already had a 2-year-old. So help us understand a little bit more about, what was your reaction? How did you cope with it?
Well, thank you, Jyoti. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I guess the answer to that question starts with, actually, I didn't get a clear diagnosis at 36. What I got was a lot of dismissal, really. I was really dismissed so often as potentially a stressed out mum, someone who wasn't coping. I was constantly at the doctors with a vast array of symptoms. And for me, I didn't actually get a proper diagnosis till I was in my 40s. So I really did have to navigate this whole landscape whereby I even had on my medical notes, I've said this before, a locum doctor was in the surgery one day, and I sort of presented with lots of sinus problems. I now know that was all related to histamine intolerance and estrogen dominance. I was having heavy periods. And I saw on the screen that it actually said worried well.
Yeah.
So having spent some time in the pharmaceutical industry, I know that that's not medical terminology. That was a statement of my character. That wasn't a medical diagnosis, and it incensed me greatly.
What does that? What did they mean when they said that you worried well?
Well, when I challenged him, I said, what does that mean? He looked really sheepish and sort of, you know, if there was a corner he could have backed into, he would have gone into it. And he said, I'm not really sure. And I said, it sort of suggests that I'm some sort of hypochondriac.
Yeah.
Or that it's a
Yeah.
psychological problem rather than a set of physical, psychological, social problems, quite honestly. And at that point, I just took things into my own hands and I thought, right, I'm no longer being served here by GP practice. And I'm ashamed to say it is still that case. They apologise in hushed tones for the fact they don't actually have anyone who's interested in menopause, and we don't really know about those things. So I advocated for myself, and I would encourage anyone watching this to do the same. I advocated for myself and I took myself to a different part of the NHS, which was actually a reproductive clinic, which happened to be in a town not very far from me. And they were wonderful. So really the answer to that question was I probably had another 4 or 5 years before I really got some answers. And I remember being on holiday with my daughter, and we were in Italy, and I remembered this really wonderful lady who is still there practicing, and she rang me and she said, Amantha, as soon as you come back from your holiday, please can you come in? We've had your blood test results back and you have next to no estrogen at all. Which explained why I was feeling so rubbishy, and also that I had next to no progesterone. So I was literally surviving with a 5-6-year-old, and I had nothing. I just was soldiering on, and I think that may resonate with lots of people watching. You know, the whole keep calm, carry on, keep going, but at what cost, really? And I think that's the thing I feel most upset about.
And you mentioned, so this was when your your daughter was 6-year-old, but when you started experiencing these, she was 2 years old. So you had this 4-year, 5-year gap. And were you at any point, was it also confused with postpartum depression? I mean, all the excuses that women are given, right? Postpartum depression, you're not coping well with a child, you're too stressed out. Was all of that part of the whatever commentary that you were getting, so to speak, from people around?
No, I wish it was. I wish I could say I had that level of interest in me. No one took that much interest in me. I remember a much older doctor saying to me, well, these things happen. And I said, but I'm passing the equivalent of golf ball clots every 17 days. That can't be normal. And they just kept saying, well, it just takes time to settle down. I was like, well, it's 3 years. I then became anemic. I started having dizzy spells. And I think it's the whole silo way of treating people. So concurrently at that time, I also was starting to develop histamine intolerance. So they just started silo treating me for that. Let's get you on steroid sprays. Let's get you on some antihistamines. But none of that was addressing the elephant in the room, which was that actually, have you considered this could be something else? And I think that's the point at which I got missed. And I'm pretty sure so many other people get missed. Is there a, sadly, we treat the first symptom we're presented with and we run with that, rather than connecting the dots, which is what I talk about in my work, which is connecting the dots around the person to go, well, hang on a minute, could this be something else? Let's rule out that it's not menopause before we stick someone on an antidepressant. But no, I had no one ask about my mental health. The only question I had, which again I find bizarre, was, did I want to go back on contraception?
Right. And were you at that point, you were in the UK, so for our viewers, so at that point, were you with the primary care or were you seeing a specialist?
So originally I was in primary care. I then went to the clinic, the reproductive clinic, who did a raft of like fertility blood tests. So they looked at my follicle stimulating hormone. They could see that was off the charts.
Right.
They could see that my estrogen levels were low. They were looking at my progesterone levels. I don't believe they looked at my testosterone levels, but it was indicative enough that we think the ovaries are starting to struggle now.
Right.
So I did stay on a contraceptive, which for 2 years was okay. It was just okay.
Yeah.
But my psychological symptoms, I started to become quite anxious. I didn't want to leave the house. I was cancelling things. I certainly wasn't as engaged with my work as I am now.
Yeah.
And then much later, I then sought private help because
Right.
I'd come to the end of the road with the NHS, and financially I did really put myself up against it. Spoken very openly that I've spent thousands, literally thousands of pounds, nearly £10,000 actually trying to get the help for myself. And so when we talk about people going into financial debt and financial crisis to get their health and well-being on track, again, that really motivates me to do more in this space. It's just not
acceptable. And this is quite a recurring theme. And you know, so far the women that have come on Menopause Science, they have been able to, I'm sure that was a stretch for them to afford that expenditure on your health, but how many women are able to do that, right? And the other thing that we are hearing again and again from our participants is the lack of information and medical expertise in the primary care level, because that is really your first line of action. And there's been lots of research studies where they don't appreciate menopause, because I mean, even the fact that you went to the reproductive medicine section, I don't know if NHS actually has a post-reproductive medicine section. I mean, those are all a number of elephants in the room that I think lots of startups like Tara Cares are trying to address. In terms of you touched on a little bit on your psychological responses to the situation. Physiologically, you know, you were bleeding a lot, as you mentioned. How I think one of the things women have asked us is, gosh, how do you cope with it? Like, because we are all, as you said, we are all, women are expected to be warriors in every single phase, and you just can't be a warrior in every single phase. So anything that you did in terms of, I don't know, managing your schedule, I don't know if you had support from family. Tell us some actionable things that you potentially took after, I'm sure you'd gone through long episodes of, being disengaged, and you know what, no, I need to get things back on track. Anything that you can share from that perspective would be helpful.
Yeah. And I would agree that I do think, all of that's the societal burden on women to just keep going. It is part of the stigma also. My world became very small. I didn't go out. And when I was bleeding, I couldn't leave the house for 6 days.
Yeah.
So out of a 17-day cycle, that left 11 days, and fortunately, and I do think these things come to you, I definitely think there's a purpose behind me being so vocal about this, is that I'm an NLP coach, which is all about behavior change. It's about cognitive function. It's about being the best version of yourself. So I was really rooted in the psychology of, okay, I can't go back to what I was doing, but I can do something else. What can I do with my time? And I made a choice to vest that time in being a stay-at-home parent until I was strong enough to do what I'm doing now. And it was therein that I had the idea, okay, I'm going to use the time and I'm going to train. I'm going to relearn something. I can't really go out. I can't be in a mainstream job. I didn't really want to be anyway. So I requalified as a neuro-linguistic programming coach. I did hypnotherapy as well and timeline therapy. And I thought, great, I've had an experience of that. I want to be able to do that. And in 2010, the same year I got my diagnosis, I actually set up my business, Amantha King Coaching, and thought, right, that's what I'm going to do. I can map that around my hours. I can map that around what I thought was going to be my cycle. If I didn't want to get in the car, I didn't. And so what's the old saying? If you can't find what you're looking for, go create it.
Yeah. And, kudos to you. And I really want to acknowledge you for asserting to yourself. And it was, you saying to yourself, all right, I can't get my old self back, but maybe that old self has outlived itself. Right. And I think that would resonate with many viewers, because women in their 40s try to find what they were in their 20s or 30s, but the 40s or your late 30s is, if you open your eyes, well, it's a new horizon that's presented in front of you. It may not look the same, because then, because it's changed, it's not familiar. But if you just step in with courage, as you did, and you created a new world for yourself, and look where it has got you. You literally transmuted your suffering, and you're giving back, you're enriching other people's lives. So well done on doing that, because I mean, I've reinvented myself a few times in my life, and I know all that it takes, to do that. And the next thing that I want to touch with you on is your child, your daughter. She's not very old, but she's little. But at the same time, when your mother is going through this transition, I mean, 6-year-olds nowadays I think they're more aware than probably you and I were when we were just playing out on the playground. Was there anything from her perspective that you saw changed, or things that you may not be able to do with her, like run in the park when you are, bleeding heavily? Is there anything from that aspect that you think is worth sharing?
Yes, definitely. But it's not then, it's now. That 6-year-old is now 17.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's probably what I want to lean into in answering this question, which is, yes, it's difficult getting the diagnosis, but that is not the end. That's the beginning.
Yeah.
She's now 17. I'm now 52. The hardest time is actually now. It's actually now. Her hormones are rushing in. Mine are still rushing out.
Yeah.
I did a bit of traveling last week. It has really wiped me out. My levels of tolerance are lower. Self-care has become so much more important, and it's something that I'm unapologetic about now, in ways that I was constantly putting myself the last person on that list of priorities, and rarely getting to, actually, if I'm really honest. My husband came home one day and I was ironing tea towels, and he sat me down and he said, I think we really need to have a word about how you're spending your time. Because for me, having left a very high profile corporate job, I'd lost my sense of self in becoming a mother and someone who was stuck at home. Physically stuck at home. I'm quite an outgoing person. I love being around people. So to have changed in that way was hard. But what I would say to people is, expect the unexpected, dial up the flexibility and the support, and dial down the expectation. And that has really been, I'm not completely there, I won't lie. But that is, if I could give one set of learnings to people, it will be, we don't know how long it's going to take. What works for one person may not work for another, but you'll find your new normal. And I'm constantly readjusting my new normal if I'm traveling. I've only recently got back traveling. That was something I wasn't able to do at all.
No.
So believe in yourself and have others raise you up, support you, not put you on a pedestal, because you don't need that pressure, but people to raise you up and support you and have your back. And, it's quite hard, if we're being these strong women, to be vulnerable at the same time as well. So show your vulnerability, because actually people want to be there for you. You will have been there for enough people. I can tell you, anyone who's watching this, you'll have been there for enough people. It's time for other people to step up for you. So I would say I still have those challenges now, tiredness, those pillars of health, if I'm not drinking enough, if I'm not eating well, if I'm not sleeping well. So I do need to take responsibility for that, but also this is a shared experience. It touches people in families, it touches partners, it touches your work colleagues. So it's a good job we are raising awareness, but ultimately put yourself at the top of the list, because that's where you're at your best.
I love that. A lot of things resonated from there. Me having come from being a strong corporate woman and now running my startup. I'm 43, so as South Asian women, we start our symptoms early on, and the fatigue is just completely like wow, I cannot get up today and be on a 7 o'clock call. And running my own startup helps me because I control my schedule. but not many women are able to do that, right? So that really, and having been strong and run businesses even before you, that whole point you made around that element of vulnerability, you first have to accept yourself, isn't it? Before anybody else can. Because once you've accepted yourself, it honestly doesn't matter if the other people accept you or not.
So true. Is it? And that's part of our second spring, isn't it? I love that. I love the fact that they don't even have a word for menopause in Japan. And actually what you said earlier about maybe it's not grieving for who we once were, it's about keeping the bits that still serve us and that we like, and being curious to see, well, most women will spend another third of their life postmenopausally. Make it the one you want.
Absolutely. And if the things that if we lean in a bit on the spiritual side, things that eclipse from our life, probably we don't need them anymore, hence they get eclipsed. But it's about whether you want to be judicious with your time. As you said, ironing tea towels is probably not the best use of your time if you have 2 hours and you could be doing something else that nourishes you, unless ironing nourishes you. I mean, but that was a great it doesn't nourish me anyway. So that was a great point. And I think the gesture from your husband, and for him to be so observant, I think that's something that's needed, that shared experience. It's not just a woman's experience, whether if she's single, she's got friends and family. If she's partnered up, then she's got her partner. What was that impact on your personal life? What was the impact on your personal life? Anything that you're comfortable to share?
Huge, and it still is that, so let me be that person who can say it for people who are feeling it. It tests relationships. More women instigate separation around the average age, and I say that cautiously, around the average age, because life feels unbearable at times. I was on a walk with my husband the other week, and we said, menopause is like the uninvited guest at a party. Everyone's having a great time, and then the doorbell goes, and it's like, oh no, it's that person. And that's what menopause is like, but it turns up and it never goes. You don't know how long it's staying for. It starts encroaching into bits of your life. It's not like it just stays in the spare bedroom, this guest. It's like it's sitting in your favorite chair, it's raiding your fridge. It can feel like it's the two of you and this thing. And what I would say to people is, particularly partners, you have such a huge role to play in this. I'm not saying you're responsible, but you have a huge supporting role to play in this, and to see it as it's together. You're dealing with this together. You'll have more good days than bad days, but I want to be a realist here. It's really, really challenging. And when we start to lean on vices like alcohol or the foods that we're eating, that's where it's about taking that responsibility to go, actually, no, this isn't helping our situation.
I can't drink wine, even a glass of wine at all.
And
I'll be wrecked.
And I'm the same, because I also have concomitant histamine intolerance, so that affects what food we eat as a family. It depends how late I'm going to bed in the week. I'm a night owl genetically, so the light's not off, my face is lit up by a blue iPhone until at least 11 o'clock most nights. But I have to be mindful of that. That's not helping me. It's not helping me turn up and be a more patient tolerant partner, patient tolerant mother. So there are a lot of things that's asked of you during this time, but the more you can do it with someone who can encourage you, come on those walks with you, do some yoga together, make some time for one another, and actually be compassionate, be kind, less judgmental, and more tolerant. I mean, I know those are big asks, but it's something that turns up that naturally we have no control over, or little control over. We can do our best. And I think that would be the advice. Everyone's doing their best.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, one of my previous participants, they said, there's no 50-50. Both the people have to bring in their 100%. And I loved what that thing, it just stuck with me. And then what she said is, because we are also working with men, and they ask us every day saying, what can we do? Because we know, our wives or girlfriends are going through that, but what can we do? And we said, well, this is what you can do. And that's a big ask, because if in that relationship that space hasn't existed before, that's going to disrupt it then, because now you're stretching it, and so you're right, it tests relationships. And yeah, there's a reason why in the 40s and your late 40s or early 50s is when lots of breakups and divorces are happening. And you can either use the experience to deepen the bond, or you can say, well, we're done, and you separate. The last aspect that I want to touch on, which I know is quite near and dear to your heart because of your experience in the pharmaceutical industry, is HRT. And I eagerly look at your comments in social media where you try to educate women as much as you can. Tell us about, did you take HRT, and tell us about a little bit of if you were in a roller coaster journey with HRT. Anything that you would like to share with our viewers?
Yeah, I would like to share. I would say I started out on HRT, like most people, thinking it was the miracle cure. A bit like when you have a headache, you take a tablet, wait a few hours, it's either going to be better or worse. And I'm very cautious now about how I advocate HRT. I think it's part of a system of care. However, I always start every conversation with a woman that I speak to about your stress levels, because HRT or any intervention will only be as good as your stress levels are. Because if your underlying stress levels are off the charts, it doesn't matter how much HRT you work, your body's going to reject it. And for me, I think that's what I discovered. I wasn't seeing change quickly enough, which made me feel more stressed. The more stressed I felt, the less I was likely to see improvements. And again, the specialists that I did go to see, there is a lot of talk, isn't there, about sticking within the doses, going beyond the doses. I've tried both. And what I can tell you is I've had to listen again. I've had to advocate and listen to my own body. And there have been times that I've pushed back against a specialist trying to encourage me to take more because it's good for my bones. It may be good for my bones, but it makes me really irritable, and it makes me not feel okay. So I think it's about it. There is, again, something about be clear on what's working for you. I'm now at a stage now, having been on HRT for 7 or 8 years now, my body is starting to say, actually, even some of that is not as helpful as if I'm doing all the eating well, sleeping well, hydrating well, looking after my mental health. So I would say it's a bit like a buffet, okay? I don't know about you, but I'm obsessed by food.
Yeah, me too.
There's nothing more boring than going to a party where there's only one thing being served. Even if it's the most amazing thing you're eating, much nicer to have a buffet of things going on. And I think that's what excites me. I like talking about, okay, what could you be eating for breakfast that's loaded with B6 or zinc or magnesium that's going to help you? Anything you can do to nourish this house that you live in, which is your body, great. Anything that you can accessorize in terms of your mind, that's also helpful. And then maybe HRT as well. And I'm very, very careful to say what works for you may not work for someone else. I'm also here to say that actually there've been periods where I've come off HRT because I felt so wretched, and having my COVID vaccination, that really rocked the boat for me with my HRT. And that's something probably for another day, but in terms of how many people have side effects as a result of their COVID vaccination or COVID itself. So for me, it's a mixed bag. It's like it didn't turn out to be the Disney ending I hoped it would be. I'm still going. But I just have a moment where I've only ever cried once about being menopausal, which I should. And it was last year when I had pelvic pain and I had to go to the doctor. I thought I better get that checked out. And I really cried in front of the consultant when she said to me, your ovary is so tiny, we can hardly even see it on the ultrasound. And in that moment, that whole thing about feeling womanly, mother, feminine, my femininity in one moment, it just consumed me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. I'm starting to realize, okay, that phase of my life is over now.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I inadvertently, every interview I have goosebumps at some point, and this was the point in this interview when you said, that you can't even see your ovaries, and it's, again, I think we want our viewers to know that it's a natural response, because you are a woman, and there are so many things about you that make you a woman, and it's important to recognize that now there are other things that need, that self-identity that has been constructed, that probably goes through a deconstruction, because I love your analogies of a house and gas. A new house has to be, reconstructed on a foundation that's wiser, on a foundation that has gone through the highs and lows of life. And so build your new house on that foundation. I think that's what stuck with me. And I love that you presented a balanced view on HRT, because it helps people. Like, we are doing the research we are doing, in terms of the side effects of HRT. It's like choosing between, are you okay with dyspepsia, or are you okay with bleeding, or are you okay with pelvic pain? That's the choice we have, right? I mean, it's not like you said, it may be good for your bones, but it makes you feel anxious and depressed, then you may forego it, because what is priority? And I think it's it's a great phase of life to be very clear on your priorities. And one of the reasons we want even your 17-year-olds and 20-year-olds to know of this is because it's going to come. And even, if 20-year-olds or 30s, people in their 30s are choosing their partners, I honestly feel that this has to be a factor, that person needs to know that this is coming. And for some women, it may come early. And how will that relationship handle that phase probably is a big test if someone's looking for the long term, that is. So that really resonated. Thank you so much, Amantha, for that. So, I mean, it's been so amazing to spend time with you. I could feel like, you and I could talk for hours, and we probably will offline. But for our viewers, that was Amantha King. We started from feeling dismissed to, going through the journey with the healthcare system, to Amantha taking things on her own hands, taking ownership of her experience, and saying that it's a shared experience. And there's so many nuggets of wisdom, honestly, that you've said, right from the way partners can support each other to the way I'm sure your 17-year-old is probably more educated and informed than a normal 17-year-old. And I love that you're using your voice so in such an authentic way, and not being apologetic for your self-care routine and your and discipline about yourself. Before we close, I've really enjoyed the conversation, but before we close, is there any last bits, any last piece of learning or insight that you want to leave our viewers with?
Yes, I would say the fact that I'm here on here with you is just so exciting. In the last period of time, to see the authenticity of people wanting to come in and make a difference in this place. And that's probably it's not a word of caution, but it's about a word of optimism. It's like, good things are coming. Be careful which sources you go to for your guidance and your information. I was really lucky. I have a science background. I could sort out what sounded plausible to what didn't sound plausible. I'm advocating what we're doing here, because it's important that people get the right information at the right time from the right credible sources. So that would be the thing that I would say. I think we're in such a better place than when we were a decade ago. Still work to do, but I'm excited to see what comes next. So that would just be my last little gem for people.
Thank you so much, Amantha, and we appreciate that. And that's exactly why Tara Cares was founded. We exist to tackle misinformation, misdiagnosis, and mismanagement. And I look forward to collaborating with you on this exciting journey that we are on. Thank you for your time, and to our viewers, please hit like and subscribe. And that's Amantha King for you for Menopause Science. Take care of yourselves.